Support for this program is provided by the men and women of the Louisiana Forestry Association. Through sustainable forestry, LFA members promote the health and productivity of Louisiana's forests for generations to come. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Louisiana Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney.
And I'm Craig Freeman. Tonight, we invite you to join us as we take a look back at highlights from the past 12 months of LPB's unique Deliberative Democracy series.
For over 5 years, Louisiana Public Square has been providing citizens a forum to voice their opinions and concerns to experts and decision makers about issues affecting Louisiana. LPB has received state and national recognition for the series, and we are proud that it serves as a model for other stations around the country.
Our topics this evening will be hurricane lessons learned, economic development, Louisiana's high school dropout problem, and the power of online social networks.
November 30th marked the end of hurricane season. While northwestern Louisiana experienced extreme weather events in October, the state was spared a major hurricane this year. For our program, Hurricane Lessons Learned, LPB hosted town hall meetings in Baton Rouge and Jackson, Mississippi, to examine how prepared we are for when the next big one strikes. We focused on 3 key areas of managing mega emergencies: reducing risk, rescue and recovery, and the focus of tonight's highlight, planning and preparation.
Even though people had discussed it, it was all talk.
Katrina overwhelmed planning efforts in almost every category. The evacuation of New Orleans represented both the best and the worst in planning for megastorms. Terry Ebert headed emergency preparedness for New Orleans during Katrina.
Nowhere in America had you ever moved 90% of an urban population in 48 hours.
An effective contraflow plan vastly increased outbound New Orleans area traffic by rerouting highway lanes. But the state agency assigned to evacuate citizens with no transportation had neither the operational plan nor the resources necessary to carry out the task. Over 100,000 people were left stranded. At the local level, New Orleans never arranged to use hundreds of available school buses or contract with Amtrak to carry thousands away from danger. The state now has contracts for bus, rail, and air transport for those in need, according to Louisiana Department of Social Services head Christy Nichols.
The bottom line is we have 50,000 evacuees that don't have transportation that we have to plan for, and we have sufficient capacity to shelter them if we had a storm tomorrow.
Many of those evacuees, however, would have to go out of state. A large state-owned shelter in Alexandria and newly passed laws that encourage storm-proofing public buildings will add in-state capacity. Nonprofit agencies assisted many Katrina victims. A lack of coordination impaired their effectiveness, according to Melissa Flournoy, director of the Gulf States Policy Institute.
I think that nonprofits were called on to jump into service without the authority or the direction of how they integrated with the state and federal plans.
Pat Santos, the state's Assistant Deputy Director of Emergency Preparedness, acknowledges improvement is needed, but overall he's pleased with the state's planning effort.
I think the awareness is much greater. The attitude of leaning forward and being ready and having those resources ready to go is light years ahead of where we were for Katrina.
And General Honore, when you arrived down there, everybody was like, well, the military's finally here. I mean, were you astounded at Katrina that everything was in chaos when you got there?
It wasn't that people were incapable. The storm overmatched everything. And it was a worst case scenario that finally came to play its card in New Orleans that we have talked about for years, and this time it happened. And many of the people that didn't evacuate, there was a sense that, well, you know, we've had storms before, we'll ride it out. And then you have people who wanted to leave who couldn't leave. I do think we have to do a better job in the state with shelter. There's something known as a 200-mile-an-hour building. We need to build them. and we need to build more of them. There's some folks in the other states that are getting a little tired. You know, they take our
They're
folks,
weary.
Right. Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, we've leaned on them hard. We need to build our capacity here in Louisiana to take care of our own people. Amen. And we need to do it. We need to do it quick. FEMA need to give us the money to do it. So, because when we shelter people inside the state of Louisiana, we can get them back home quicker. And last year we were bringing people back home and we were having a football game. We got to reset our culture here to take care of our people.
Can you give us some concrete examples of ways that we're working with our food banks, our nonprofits, to pre-position supplies, to get ready in advance of a situation like this, so that as soon as the winds die down, nonprofits that can react very quickly are ready to go and can go to work?
We had heard about the problems that happened during Katrina, where you'd have trucks loaded with ice on the interstate and they couldn't find anyone to talk to see where they could deliver it, whether it was a food bank or a shelter. So that's a much more coordinated effort at this point. Last year we partnered with NIMSAT at University of Louisiana Lafayette, and we've to establish what we're terming a Business Emergency Operations Center, which supports businesses and nonprofits, so that if there's a need that's out there, we can match that with either a volunteer organization that may be able to fit that need or a business. And that's something we're going to be doing to a much larger extent for this hurricane season and even bigger in the future. And again, this is one of the best practices that we hope that the rest of the country might be able to emulate.
Jerry, do you feel like planning's in place?
Well, I think that the planning is starting to get in place. We are working very closely with organizations like the Louisiana Association of Nonprofit Organizations to be sure that nonprofit organizations have plans in place for themselves so that they can respond, but also to have them look at their role in response and participate appropriately in that. But again, the nonprofits need to be more included in the planning earlier.
During Katrina, when evacuees found themselves in their respective areas for extended periods of time and away from home, and school shut down, they did not know where to enroll their kids during their time away before their own schools could be started up again. Is it possible that Louisiana schools can partner with schools in other states so that families have a destination in mind when they evacuate?
The governments of St. Bernard, Orleans, Jefferson, and Plaquemines, all in advance of a storm each year. They come in the spring to sign an agreement with us about housing their vital operations to make sure they can still communicate with their citizens even in the event of a storm. And so I would suggest, and it's not you, but I think that's the model we need to adopt, is have the school systems begin to communicate with each other in advance, put agreements in place, and then know the hours that both can operate and move those schools forward in that direction.
Excellent question, and one maybe we can follow up on, because certainly that's one thing public broadcasting is talking about doing, is doing electronic schools and having classes at shelters. And also helping people do that, because that's where you can use new technology and communication to do classes like that. So, and you have a follow-up over here.
Hi, I'm Kathy McGoey. I live in Baton Rouge now, but I was in New Orleans during Katrina and evacuated ahead of the storm, thank goodness. There was a lot of discussion about a mandatory evacuation, actually making people leave. And I know it was a little controversial about, well, you can't really make people leave. I mean, how do you all feel about that?
I know of no law, unless they've changed that in recent years, since Katrina, that you can actually force people out. The big thing is to get to the vulnerable population, the elderly, the poor, and the disabled. And we still got to break the code on the disabled, on where they live, and who's going to go get them. We could do better that in America. We are a better country than that. But we need to have disclosure of where they are and use the faith-based communities and the nonprofits to know that's got to be a community. That has to be a street organized event. Otherwise, there's going to be some people who don't know that there's a storm coming because they're isolated and they live alone, or the elderly.
Time for one more question from our group. Yes, come on.
Yes. Hello. My question for you pertains to the homeless veterans and also the psychiatric clients that are homeless and are on the street. You know, when this is going on and they say you need to move, they do not have money. Some of them cannot make the appropriate decision to leave. What do you have in place to take care of these people?
They can be picked up off the street, but 72 hours, I think they have a decision to make. If in 72 hours there's not a commitment, the hospitals have to release those individuals. They can't hold them there. And there's not a massive facility to take care of homeless vets or the homeless population in general. What we are finding is, I think just like she said, you're finding people with mental illnesses that we're going to have to address that problem.
One of the goals of Louisiana Public Square is to create conversations, not only among our studio participants and viewers, but also among civic and governmental leaders. Following our Lessons Learned program, Mark Cooper, Director of the Governor's Office of Emergency Preparedness, contacted the Louisiana Association of Nonprofit Organizations to ensure they are incorporated more fully into future hurricane preparation plans.
Well, while Louisiana dodged a major hurricane bullet, this year it has not been immune to the nation's financial storm. In February, Louisiana Public Square went to the stage of the Strauss Theater in Monroe to explore the state's economic development challenges and what it will take to move Louisiana forward. While falling oil and natural gas prices have left the state with a $2 billion revenue deficit, Louisiana, by most indicators, has been fairly insulated from the nation's economic downturn. Stephen Moray is Secretary of Louisiana Economic Development, or LED.
We had positive job growth last year, even as the South shrank jobs, even as the national economy lost jobs. Our unemployment rate has been below the southern average, below the national average for over a year. Our income growth is higher than the national average, in fact, number 3 in the country.
But Louisiana is not immune to the national recession. While construction jobs in Louisiana have grown by 3.3%, manufacturing jobs have fallen by an almost equal amount, 3.5%.
Louisiana's greatest economic challenge is not the national recession. It's the longer-term issue that we are heavily invested in low to negative growth industry sectors.
Economic analysis of the last 17 years shows a continual loss of jobs in the state's primary sectors: chemical manufacturing, farming, oil and gas, and paper manufacturing.
There were 550 employees at the facility when they closed.
Clarence Hawkins is mayor of Bastrop. In December, International Paper closed its mill in the Morehouse Parish town. It was the third loss of a major employer in 4 years to northeast Louisiana. 40% of the mill's employees were from Morehouse Parish, and the facility accounted for 20% of Bastrop's budget. Despite the setback, Mayor Hawkins views the closure as an opportunity for growth.
It has made us do what we needed to do earlier, and that's take a look at ourselves economically, go through some revitalizations of our economy, and start looking at 21st century kinds of industries.
According to Moray, Louisiana as a whole needs to revitalize its economy and cultivate growing sectors, such as pharmaceuticals and medical manufacturing, software publishing, scientific research and development, and computer system design.
We're trying to identify newer growth industries where there's still a potential for us to get a foothold before other states have a 2 or 3 decade lead ahead of us. A great example of that is digital media.
The state recently attracted the world's leading interactive entertainment software company to Baton Rouge. Electronic Arts will locate its Global Quality Assurance Center on the LSU campus. The facility will create 20 full-time and 200 part-time jobs with an annual payroll of $5.7 million. Part of the appeal of Louisiana to the software giant was its digital media tax credit program. Dr. Robert Eisenstadt is Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. He says that even though studies show that states usually see a net loss in tax revenues from these types of incentives,
you can't just look at tax revenues, okay? I mean, it's not just a tax revenue question. It's a question of employment, okay? It's a question of jobs creation. There's other things going on there.
A tax break that has been used to successfully expand Louisiana's existing businesses is the Renewal Community Tax Incentive. Enacted by Congress to spur growth in economically challenged areas, the tax credit has generated over 3,000 jobs in the state's eligible communities. Tana Trishelle with the Northeast Louisiana Economic Alliance says the incentive fills a critical gap.
Because it creates jobs in impoverished areas, it creates quality jobs. That's what's important, 20 jobs in Brayville or Baskin, Louisiana is like 200 in South Louisiana.
Another priority for LED as it moves forward will be to cultivate the unique assets found in the state's 8 economic regions. Examples include Barksdale Air Force Base in northwest Louisiana, England Air Park in the central region, Chenault International Airport in southwest Louisiana, the Louisiana Immersive Technologies Enterprise in the Acadiana region, Pennington Biomedical Research Center in the Capital Region, and the Franklin Farm Mega Site in northeast Louisiana. This 1,400-acre site in Richland Parish is within a 125-mile radius of over 100 auto suppliers. Murray says the state continues to aggressively market the asset,
which we think will have an opportunity to participate in the next major phase of Southern automotive industry growth starting around 2010 or 2011.
Small business is what is going to be the expansion now during this probably 2 years of recession that we'll go through, and that's what we need to make sure that we take care of.
Senator Mike Walsworth is from West Monroe. He feels that the state's current focus should be on tax and utility rate relief for existing businesses, plus preparing workers for the future.
Those that may not have the kind of training, we need to make sure that the training is being done now and prepare for what is going to probably be in the next 2 years, an expansion by business once this recession is over.
Governor Jindal and the legislature worked together last year to pass comprehensive workforce development reforms. These included development of Louisiana Fast Start to provide turnkey workforce solutions and improvements to the state's community and technical colleges. Recently released figures show a 13% increase in enrollment, with many of these colleges among the fastest growing in the nation. Educated and trained workers are key ingredients to a strong economy, according to Stuart Ewing, board member of the newly formed North Louisiana Economic Development Corporation.
We get good resources from the 3 universities in the area, Grambling State University, Louisiana Tech over in Ruston, and ULM of Monroe, and they provide outstanding students and resources, and hopefully with a centralized economic development group, we can keep some of our college graduates at home.
Ewing is Executive Vice President of CenturyTel in Monroe, one of the state's 3 Fortune 500 companies. He says a recent merger by CenturyTel will make it the 4th largest independent telephone company in the country and provide stability for its 1,400 employees. For workers around the state less certain about their employment future, a White House analysis of the recently passed stimulus package may provide some comfort. It projects the plan will either save or create a total of 52,700 Louisiana jobs over the next 2 years.
We have 95,000 vacancies of jobs that are unfilled because we do not have qualified people. So what is the solution for this?
In most states, not just in our state, but most states, the vast majority of jobs are not jobs for college graduates. They're jobs for people that have more training than high school but less than a traditional 4-year college degree. But in the state of Louisiana, for the last few decades, we focused almost exclusively on our 4-year colleges and universities. One of the critical parts of the governor's plan is to dramatically expand the Louisiana Community and Technical College system in our state so that more of our high school graduates and our adults have the opportunity to get the training that they need to get the high-paying jobs that are available today. It's going to make a big difference over the next few years.
What you don't want to do is look at a problem like that and try to come up with some little short-term fix so that over the next year we can fill all those 95,000 jobs, because all you'll do is waste your time and money. What you want to do is set up investments in education from pre-K all the way through 12 and community technical colleges and higher education that'll create the kind of economy that you want 20 years from now, the kind of workforce that you want 20 years from now. Because that's the only way that investments in education and training actually work. They work over the long term. So you don't look at a number like that and try to solve it by next year. You say, that's too bad that we have that situation right now, and 20 years from now, we're going to have a completely different kind of workforce that's about innovation and technology.
If any new jobs come here to Monroe, then I think they should hire Monroe people. I mean, do you feel the same?
Well, of course, we always want to start with our folks. First, we want to make sure that we do have a skilled workforce, and that's what we all are talking about, because we don't want to just bring masses of folks from outside inside and just skip over the residents that we already have. But that's the first thing. We want to make sure that they're skilled and they're taking care of their business, but also that we're assisting them in that effort. But again, at the same time, we don't want to eliminate folks that's coming from the outside that can enhance our areas, that can help us to expand and those type of things as well. We just want our citizens to be ready when it happens. Not if it happens, when it happens.
We looked at a program in Georgia. And in Georgia, you think of Georgia as a really wealthy state, and it is, but the rural parts of Georgia aren't that different from the rural parts of the state of Louisiana. A lot of the same poverty issues and so forth. They have something called Georgia Quick Start. And they tell companies, if you'll commit to locate in our state, we will provide a turnkey workforce solution for you. We'll recruit the employees that you need. We'll develop customized training specific to your company and deliver it to those employees so that you'll have the workforce that you need to be successful. We're going to create that exact same program in the state of Louisiana, but we're going to call it Fast Start instead of Quick Start, because within 3 years we're going to be in the top 3 in the country ourselves, and eventually we're going to be better than Georgia, who's been ranked in the top 1 or 2 in the country for the last 10 years. That program is going to help people in Monroe and help people in Northeast Louisiana in 2 very important ways. First of all, it's going to help us win those projects. When Gardner Denver Thomas thinks about expanding here, we're going to offer that program to them. When we look at other companies that are thinking about Northeast Louisiana, we're going to offer that program to them. But the second thing is, it's going to help train existing Louisiana citizens for those good paying jobs here in Northeast Louisiana.
If you were a company wanting to come to Northeast Louisiana or North Central, what would be the first thing you did? You would probably look at a newspaper, or you would watch a TV clip, or go on the internet and see what's blogged and said. If we're waiting on Baton Rouge or Washington to solve our problems in education, economic development, litter, health care, we're not going to go very far. People that have things worked hard within their community. Now, I think the spirit of the community needs to rise all over Northeast Louisiana and Central. We need to band together in our efforts. We've got a lot of positive things, but if you keep saying that the sky is going to fall, it will fall on you. If the guy that doesn't think it won't fall on him if he's got a positive attitude.
As we're all aware, a substantial portion of Louisiana revenue comes from oil and gas. And with the wave of green technology increasing, in the next 20 years or so, we could be looking at a possible tectonic plate shift in the whole energy industry. I'm wondering, one, how vulnerable are we as a state? Number 2, what would be the impact, for instance, in North Louisiana of that revenue shift? And 3, what sort of strategies do we have in place or could we put in place to meet these new challenges?
Trying to create opportunities for green businesses or green industry to grow in Louisiana is something that we have to make a lot of serious thought about and make investments in. Because that's going to be crucial for us over the next 10 years. There was an old way, which is actually still the same way for most communities doing economic development, and that is find a site, take all the trees off of it, and try to get an auto plant to come in there and bring 1,000 or 5,000 jobs. And save your community and maybe kill some other community that you took it from. The real way to do this now is make investments from K through 12 all the way up through higher education, and then create an environment in your community, in your region, that makes it the place to be with ideas, the place to be innovative, the place to be creative, the place to be green. Those are the communities that are going to be successful in the next 10, 20, and 50 years that create that kind of environment. And financial inducements and tax breaks and all that kind of stuff will be nice, but it won't mean anything if you don't do all those other things.
As Secretary of Economic Development, I do not believe the recession is our greatest challenge economically. Our greatest challenge is that we are heavily invested as a state. in industries that are shedding jobs. When you look at wood products, agriculture, even oil and gas, chemical industry, if you look at the last 30 years, all four of those industries, our primary driver industries in our state, have dramatically less jobs today than they had 30 years ago. What we need, and I think this speaks to what everyone has said today, is we need a balanced attack. We've got to certainly make our top priority retaining and growing the companies and small businesses that are already here today. That's got to be job number one. But number two, we've also got to identify new growth industries for the future. Louisiana is going to be a major leader in alternative energy. We attracted the first nuclear module manufacturing facility in the U.S., 1,400 new high-paying jobs in Lake Charles, Louisiana. We think eventually that one industry could create over 10,000 direct jobs in our state. We're also going after projects in biofuels and wind and solar and these other areas. Not so much the producing assets, but we want to build the components that go into those companies, into those industries. That's going to create not only thousands of new jobs for our state, but it's going to help our small businesses grow as well.
Since our program aired, the City of Monroe has attracted 2 new manufacturing projects that could create 1,700 jobs for the region. And CenturyLink, formerly CenturyTel, recently announced it will be adding 350 more employees to its Monroe facility.
An educated workforce is key to economic development. In March, we examined one of the major impediments to the state's economic growth on Louisiana's high school dropout problem. Louisiana's educational pipeline is leaking.
The graduation rate in our state is 66%, which means that about 1/3 of all students who enter high school don't graduate.
John Warner Smith is CEO of Education's Next Horizon. The organization hosted the Louisiana's Promise Dropout Summit in October. It attracted over 1,000 stakeholders to the capital city. Warner sees the economic consequences of Louisiana's high school dropout rate as far-reaching.
We pay a very high cost for health care, cost of social services, the cost of our correctional system, reduced taxes, and on and on. So I'd say the economic impact is tremendous, and especially on our workforce.
The unemployment rate for high school dropouts is more than 30% higher than that of graduates. A recent report estimated that high school dropouts from Louisiana's class of 2006 alone will cost the state over $6.8 billion in lost wages over their lifetimes. There are social costs as well. High school dropouts are 8 times more likely than graduates to be incarcerated. Louisiana already claims the highest incarceration rate of any other state.
The statistics will tell you that when kids start missing school, then that's when the other problems of getting involved with the law and things of that nature generally start.
Richie Jackson is the director of the Truancy Assessment Service Center, or TASC, for Bossier and Webster parishes, one of the 19 TASC sites in the state.
Until a child is 18 years of age, they're it's my responsibility with my agency to follow them if they're in the school system to make sure that they adhere to the Louisiana state attendance laws.
Poor attendance is a risk factor for school dropout. Last year, the legislature established truancy as 5 unexcused absences within a semester. Jackson's center focuses on K through 12 and has a 6-step process for enforcement. Penalties include fines up to $250 and possible jail time for the parent.
When you hold parents accountable, things happen. Good things happen.
The 2008 study shows that 65% of tasked children statewide had improved attendance. Recent Louisiana Department of Education data indicates that more high school students are also staying in school.
We're seeing a decrease in the number of dropouts.
Donna Nola Gainey is an assistant superintendent with the state's education agency. She notes that the total number of high school dropouts declined from 14,417 in 2006 to 13,541 in 2007.
We're really elated about that, and we really hope we'll see that trend continuing in future years as more of these initiatives that we've put in place are implemented with fidelity.
One of the state's most recent efforts is the educational mission to prepare Louisiana's youth, or Employ program. Started in January, Employ targets over 500 potential dropouts statewide. The curriculum blends high school classes with GED preparation, job skills training, adult mentoring, and dual enrollment in a technical college. The hands-on experience addresses the number one reason students cite for leaving school, lack of relevance in their coursework. Yvonne Weimer is with the Ascension Parish School Board.
Some of these students were certainly at risk of dropping out, both through truancy, possibly discipline issues, and being able to be part of the Louisiana Technical College program has benefited them greatly.
The rigor of high school has also increased. Under changes approved last year, the new Core 4 curriculum requires 4 units each of math, English, science, and social sciences in order to graduate. With parental permission, juniors may choose the slightly less rigorous core curriculum. Both include 1 more math unit than prior years. State Representative and former teacher Jim Fannin feels the Core 4 may actually contribute to the dropout problem by forcing out discouraged students. He joins other key lawmakers who favor variety over rigor for the nearly 54% of students who do not enroll in a 4-year college.
We think that 3 Englishes, 3 maths, and 3 sciences would be enough, and at the same time would leave some room in the course of that day for students to take those electives that might be vocational in nature.
Currently, students can choose between an academic or technical area of concentration, but both involve completion of the Core 4 requirements. Fannin is working with the Jindal administration to consider more options.
The discussion has to be, is the pathways that we're offering today, is that going to solve our dropout problem? I don't think it will.
Achievement is an indicator of a student's dropout risk. One measurement for Louisiana's high schoolers is the graduation exit exam that they take in both the 10th and 11th grades.
Why aren't we measuring to see that every student is moving forward, not that from year to year we're moving forward?
Billy Smith is a teacher at McKinley High School in Baton Rouge. Smith feels that while accountability is a positive move, exams such as the GEE don't give an accurate depiction of an individual's progress.
It actually gives you data on what 10th graders did last year and what 10th graders are doing this year, and and that data is not measuring, it's not comparing apples to apples.
Students must pass the GEE before they can receive their diplomas. They can retake the test 3 times a year.
I wouldn't advise anyone to not go to school.
Rodnique Holmes is a former Louisiana high school dropout. After leaving school because of family issues, she recently earned her GED. Now attending Delgado Community College, Holmes hopes to become a part of the solution.
I really want to become a teacher because, they might have children out there that's just like me, and they feel like they don't have an opportunity. So, I can inspire other people.
We were talking about things that work and how do we take best practices that you see, something that's successful in North Louisiana or something that's successful like here. There's a program for teen mothers to keep their children in daycare while they continue their education. How do we take those programs and encourage other systems throughout the state to find and use the best practices?
Well, one of the things we're doing now with the Department of Education is we're lifting up these best practices and we're educating our superintendents around the state as to what they are. In fact, yesterday we met in Alexandria for the express purpose of identifying best practices around dropouts and truancy and dealing with kids who are challenging kids, and how we would do that, so that with all of the stimulus money that's coming in, we are effective in using that stimulus money. We believe, for example, transitional classrooms and transitional schools of high quality, where we take behavioral challenged kids and put them in a program so we can get them back into the classroom, frame them in such a way that they're ready to be educated again. And those require resources. But we now have resources coming in, large resources coming from the federal government in the stimulus package to be able to support that.
Now, I think we're doing a good thing in Louisiana and in America in general, and that is an examination of educational process that is moving beyond a simple notion of fix a school and solve a problem. America is now starting to ask the question about the school's relativity to the rest of the community. Fix a community and solve a lot more in problems. Every individual has a role to play in the education of their child. And I do believe there is a metamorphosis occurring in America now that's getting back to the whole idea of communities mobilizing and taking some responsibility for what's happening in those buildings and not looking for the building itself to be the absolute answer to a child's education.
I think that what we have to ask ourselves as a state is, what are the direct interventions that really impact poverty? And what research tells us is that if you focus on family supports, work supports, and education, you will drive your poverty rate for the better. And with respect to education, I think what the Department of Education is doing in partnership with teachers and our stakeholders and with Governor Jindal's leadership around looking at strategic investments that are high impact investments that need to be resourced appropriately and that really make a difference versus making programmatic choices, because there are a lot of good programs at work, parenting programs, tutoring programs, but looking at programs that really are high impact interventions that move people out of school with GEDs and high school diplomas and ultimately really do impact poverty. That's where we have to have the public policy discussion.
Louisiana has, in my view, has no more pressing problem, period, than the dropout problem, which below that are the multitude of kids who graduate with no work ethics and no work skills. It's costing our state billions of dollars. We could fund the war in Afghanistan and Iraq if we could get these kids to be as productive as God made them. Every kid in the state of Louisiana, every kid deserves to have work ethics and some ability to make a living when he gets out. But if you come from a dysfunctional family and you live in the ghetto and you're in a school system that's not where you're behind in the fourth grade test and the next test and so forth, and you're older and you're falling behind and the subjects aren't encouraging to you, you look at what all of us have in here in your own mind. I deal with these guys every day, I know. They say, I really don't have a reason to be a good citizen. We must give people in Louisiana a reason to be a good citizen. And that reason is they can have what I got and what you got, and we've got to prepare them. And the college route for 20% and the 80% is fine. But the 80% that we're leaving behind, even the ones who are getting diplomas, many of them, they cannot compete for jobs, and we must find a way to solve that.
While only 20% of the students in America complete a 4-year college degree, 75% of those students will need a 1-year, 2-year college degree or better in order to make a living wage. So we cannot be satisfied with just getting them a shop program and just getting them a skill or just getting them even a high school diploma. These children have to get 1-year technical college, 2-year community college, or 4-year college, or they're not going to get much more than a minimum wage job.
As a classroom teacher myself, I've had some major discipline problems where it's pretty much impossible to teach the rest of the students because of 1 or 2 just totally disruptive students. I mean, to the point of threatening, other students or the teacher or things like that. Do we have, and if we don't have, are we going to get an alternative setting to put those children in so that they can continue to get an education, but where they can't stop the other children from getting theirs right then when they need it?
We have 22,000 families annually that enter our system and that are at risk of abuse and neglect. We have 8,000 children in state's custody annually. Those children are the children in classrooms that are having trouble learning. The most vital resource that we can provide to parents who have children in their homes and the home is struggling with issues of abuse and neglect and issues of discipline and mental health issues is being a coach to those parents and really helping parents learn the basic skills of parenting, mentoring, teaching, and providing for children. And that is a learned experience for most people. And for those children that are most at risk, we cannot forget that it is vital to, number one, provide those services within the home, and then connect the programs that we know work, providing vocational skills, focusing on a high school diploma, focusing on GED training, making sure that kids have opportunities and that we focus on those at-risk kids.
This past legislative session, we funded a significant pilot program around alternative schools to bring high-quality schools, and we put it in 3 regions in the state where districts come together, not just one school district, but multiple school districts come together around identifying kids who are particularly challenging, moving them out of the regular classroom and putting them in another environment. But it's a high-quality environment. We have social workers involved because there are parental issues and we need to engage the parents. Sometimes kids are beaten before they come to school and beaten when they come home. And we have to, that's why in some cases they act out. So we have to deal with the real causes of this problem. And it costs more money to provide these settings. And oftentimes school districts don't want to invest more money in kids who aren't behaving themselves. But we know that if we do and do it the right way, we'll save those kids, we'll improve our dropout rate, we'll reduce crime overall, and we'll make for a better society.
Since the airing of our show, the legislature passed an educational reform bill that attempts to address the dropout problem. Louisiana high school students can now choose a new curriculum path to earn a career diploma. Supporters say the program accommodates those students who don't plan on pursuing a 4-year degree. Opponents fear the legislation softens existing requirements to the detriment of both students and accountability standards.
Well, high schoolers already making an impact on the state are members of the Legislative Youth Advisory Council of the Louisiana Commission on Civic Education. LPB is proud to be a part of the commission that promotes good citizenship among our youth. The topic of our final clip, the power of online social networks, was selected from a number of suggestions from the Youth Advisory Council. This is only appropriate since young people are the biggest users of these social media sites. Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, Twitter. 6 years ago, no one had heard these words. Today, these 4 internet companies have a subscriber base of nearly 350 million people. Recent high school grad Autumn Williams is one of them.
I have a lot of friends in different states, so I use MySpace to keep in touch with them since I don't get to see them all the time. And we can put our pictures on there, and we can comment them, and we can message each other, and it works out nicely. I love it.
2 out of 3 online teens use social network sites. Users construct individual profiles and connect these profiles to other users or groups online. These connections form personal networks, virtual communities that reflect and support pre-existing offline relationships. Between 2005 and 2008, the number of adult Internet users who had created a social network profile quadrupled from 8% to 35%, according to the Pew Internet and American Life Project. 75% of online adults 18 to 24 use social network sites, but use declines with age. Only 7% of online 65-year-olds and older have social network profiles. Blogs are considered social media because they allow readers to interact by leaving comments and posting their own visual material. About 1 in 4 American adults read a blog at least once a month, according to Forrester research. Twitter, the current social media poster child, can be thought of as a tiny blog that you can access on your computer or your cell phone. Twitter users send very short messages called tweets to those who have signed up to receive them. Lafayette Internet marketing expert Paul Cheney is a big fan.
Twitter is sort of like the 24/7, 365 ongoing networking cocktail party, okay? It's where you just walk into the room and you jump into a conversation that's going on and begin to participate.
Some critics are irritated by the trivial nature of many posts, but the number of Twitter users increased by 2,500% in the month of March 2009. All of these social media platforms are affecting life in America in obvious and not so obvious ways. Traditional media are losing audience. More people now get their news on the internet than from newspapers. Broadcasters are seeing their slice of the media pie shrink as digital natives, those born after 1980, create their own content and seek out alternative programming online. The political scene was transformed in 2008 by massive online mobilization. Some media analysts see a rosy future for civic engagement in a digital democracy. Some think technology will discourage shared experience by fostering customized media environments devoid of alternative ideas. Government agencies are just beginning to investigate the use of social media as a means of providing services to citizens. Though not a true social network site, Louisiana.gov provides a wealth of information to visitors. The Baton Rouge biking community recently mounted an online campaign to make Louisiana's roads safer for cyclists. House Bill 725, introduced by Representative Michael Jackson, is being pushed by Taylor Alexander and fellow cycling volunteers.
Most cyclists in the state are a member of a Yahoo group where they plan rides or promote functions or races, so we sent messages to those groups. I also posted frequently on Facebook, and I started a cause on Facebook called Help Make Louisiana 3 Feet a Law. And lastly, I started an electronic petition through iPetitions.com.
Within 5 days, they had over 1,500 signatures. The bill is currently working its way through the legislature. Schools tend to have a negative view of social network sites. About half the school districts in the country forbid the use of such sites on their campuses.
That's a shame because I think there's a great potential in education if it's monitored correctly and used correctly.
Joel Hilbin is the co-director of the Academy of Information Technology at Karen Crowe High School.
Research has shown that students who use the social networking sites start developing the 21st century skills that we're all interested in, the ability to edit content, the ability to format it in a way that they want it to look. They start thinking about things like that in addition to just communicating with each other.
School officials often cite safety concerns as a reason to ban social network sites. But a 2007 study sponsored by the National School Boards Association said that parents and students alike reported few such incidents.
The downside to any social networking site is kind of that fear of not knowing who's on the other end.
Derek Picard, like many of his fellow teens, approaches life online with caution.
I get a friend request all the time, and my thing is if I don't know the person personally, I really won't accept it.
Monica Ford, computer expert with the State Attorney General's office, agrees that vigilance is key to digital safety.
Whenever people get online, we kind of feel more comfortable and we're not as mindful as we should be. But any information that you would normally protect in your everyday life needs to be the same information that you're protecting when you're online.
Businesses have struggled with internet security issues for years. Their newest challenge is figuring out how to capitalize on social media's economic potential. The Lafayette Chamber of Commerce has set up a Facebook page, a Twitter account, YouTube for video, and Flickr for image sharing. Marketing guru Cheney's mantra is,
participation is marketing. We no longer merely target audiences and hit them with one-way broadcast messages. What we do is we participate as a member of approachable communities. Social media engenders trust. It fosters the building of personal relationships.
A lot of social media are commercially sponsored.
Media scholar Felicia Wu Song.
So if relationships, political life are being sustained through these social media that have other interests outside of the public good, right? They have a bottom line to fulfill. There are questions about what happens to us when we engage these social media.
The answers to these questions are actively being sought, not just by scholars, but by political groups and corporations as the number of social network users continues to grow.
Yes, I was curious about
the information that might be used for marketing purposes. When you put information, it's just information, and it's out there, and it can be mined by just anybody. And I mean, I don't even like the robocalls for the car warranties, so the possibility of that expanding exponentially through these kinds of things comes to mind. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that marketing, advertising is the reason why social networking sites are free right now, is because that ad space is available. So, and even to the degree now to where some social networking sites are actually using your user data in order to select certain ads that you might actually be interested in. So that way, whenever they advertise or whenever they make sales calls to potential advertisers, they can say, well, we can guarantee you this many clicks from people or views from people who live in Baton Rouge, who are between the ages of 18 and 24, and who have an interest in football. But one thing that advertisers have to understand is that there's a precious line that exists between the user and the advertiser. If you violate that very solid line that exists between the two, you can find yourself in a situation where you will be completely ignored and your effectiveness completely goes away.
But where that line is completely changing today. We're changing in how we relate to corporations in fundamentally different ways than we ever have before. It used to be a scenario where the corporations just put out products and we went and consumed them. I'll give you a practical example. Let's talk about Barnes & Noble, for example. So you decide after this that you're going to go get a book, and you walk into Barnes & Noble and you find your book and you take it out. I want to contrast that with Amazon. You go on Amazon and you search for a product on Amazon. Now Amazon, you can buy that product from Amazon, and Amazon will now tell you other books that you might like. Yes. Now, I want you to pretend that was happening in Barnes & Noble. Pretend when you're walking into Barnes & Noble, there were people that were waiting on you saying, you might like this book, or you might like that book. It creeps us out in real life, but in an online perspective, we're somewhat comfortable with that. We're changing our relationship with corporations. We're going toward this model where we're now demanding things of them, where we're telling them, make this product. Customization is occurring in phenomenally exciting ways for us as consumers.
In my parish, a recent issue has come up between teachers and students, and teachers being participants of social networking sites. And I just wanted to know, do you think that the school board should suggest that they don't be participants of those sites? I mean, should it just be part of the job, or should they be allowed to do it because, I mean, they have their own privacy?
It's really a keen responsibility of adults that were responsible for close interactions with students in school settings to understand what is the new relationship like in Facebook, on Twitter, in the classroom face-to-face. And it's a different skill set. So I think a lot of people are wading into this arena and unsure, but I think that it will prevail, that people will, slowly but surely get into the arena and understand that while I can read your tweets, if I'm an education professional, my world is opened up, and I have to be a little bit more constrained in what I do in my Facebook or in my tweets, because my students may read them. And I just think it's going to evolve. It's an evolving arena, and it's going to take us some time, and there'll be some missteps along the way, but we can't throw it out in terms of a few missteps because we'll be left behind.
The fact that teachers and students are interacting in a virtual world is something that's not going to be stopped. I look at it from a student perspective. I look at it from a new graduate perspective, that employers can look at my Facebook. They can look at, the tweets that I send out, as well as articles that may have been written, that kind of thing. So I think that it is also responsibility of the student to respect the virtual space. Your parents always teach you the importance of respecting your elders, and I think that even in a internet type world, you have to know those boundaries.
Our society is constantly changing. That's what makes us able to survive, upheavals around the world. Exactly how do you all think this is going to change us as a society in general, how we think about life or how we go about daily lives? Is it going to alter the way we do business, or how do you think this general shift in the mindset of the populace is going to change the way America is, I suppose?
It's appealing to try to think about technology in that way, and then certainly, my area of expertise is in studying the internet and politics, and at first people wanted to see these huge changes kind of overnight in terms of, those very simple, straightforward, direct effects. Most technologies start out and people try to use them to replace something else. And then it's not until much later that they figure out that there's a new way to use this, and there are new things that are made possible that weren't possible before. that starts to really change their behavior, and that's a complex process. But I think the thing that we see with this new technology is again, its responsiveness to users' interest. You know, compared to older media that would just wash over you in a very limited choice environment, new media offer unparalleled amounts of control for the user, not just in terms of what they want to pay for something and how they want to pay for it, but where they want to go to find the information, who they want to talk to about it, how they want to go about spending their time. And so I think it's difficult to come up with a simple answer to that question.
We're becoming less and less connected in a more and more connected world. And what I see is a lot of people who are interested in connecting with a lot of people, but what do they know about that person is less and less. So I may know what you did yesterday. I may know that you went out to dinner and where you went out to dinner, and I may know what you had for dinner last night. I may know what time you went to bed last night, which is a common thing in Facebook. I'm tired of going to bed. But how much do I know about your true character? How much do I know about who you are? And what my observation is in watching these social networking sites is we know less and less about each other. And people are more and more comfortable with that.
I actually think that our generation, once we get too much of something, we tend to go find something else. Right. So I think once we get too much of social networking, we're away from the, like Joseph said, the face-to-face interaction. I actually think that will come back. Slowly but surely, Facebook will lead to the face-to-face contacts. The conversation between politicians and their constituents over Facebook or over Twitter or whatever will lead to more in-house council type meetings. That's just my opinion, but I'm only 21 with 1 degree. So
LPB's relationship with the Legislative Youth Advisory Council continues. Since this episode was taped, a dozen council members have appeared on Louisiana Public Square, adding the voices of their generation to our discussions.
Our social media program also prompted Louisiana Public Square to enhance its social networking presence. You can now follow us on Twitter, post on our new Facebook fan page, and view show clips on YouTube. Visit our totally redesigned website, lpb.org/public square, for details. While you're there, give us your feedback and suggest a topic for 2010.
Well, that's all the time we have tonight. Join us next month for a new year and a new season of Louisiana Public Square. Thanks for watching this evening and throughout the years. Good night.
Good night and happy holidays.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org. Support for this program is provided by the men and women of the Louisiana Forestry Association. Through sustainable forestry, LFA members promote the health and productivity of Louisiana's forests for generations to come. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.